So welcome to this virtual tour of Harbor Point. We're here on August 17th, before the semester even begins, to visit Harbor Point and to hopefully share with you the transformation that's happened here across many decades. We're here today with Ryan Bettez, one of the regional directors for Corcoran Jennison. He's responsible for this place and many other places, but I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Yep, hi, I'm Ryan Bettez. Wish you guys could be here. It's always kind of fun when Neil brings out the students. I think it's always exciting to kind of show them in person what's happened here. It's pretty exciting development. I started here in 1993 as a leasing consultant and kind of fell in love with the place. I do have other sites in Maryland and DC and in Pittsburgh, but this is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's a great site. I'd love to show you around. If you have a chance, you can always come out anytime. So if you want to come out by yourself or in groups, we invite you guys to come out. It's a beautiful place to kind of see and get to see Boston Harbor.
Great. So when we come to Harbor Point, the first place we come is we drive down Mount Vernon Drive, which is the mile road at the beginning of the development of Columbia Point. And then we look across the street and we can see the Dever McCormick School, and behind us here we have the layout of the central alley or central boulevard that runs through the new Harbor Point. And we'll walk that way right now, and you'll be able to see the changes that have taken place here and some of the buildings along the way.
So I think it's really kind of important to point out the stores on the right.
So Ryan, what were some of the changes that were made that you can still see remnants of today?
So I think what's really kind of neat when they transformed Columbia Point to Harbor Point, one of the things the architect did a great job is kind of mixing buildings. Before it was 1,500 units of kind of just yellow brick buildings, and they're all built in like the 1950, 1954. So they all looked almost like very similar and kind of some people called it like a concrete jungle in the sense that it was really just kind of looking within itself. And I think one of the neat things that the architect did was kind of make a bunch of different buildings. So we have some we have kind of these 5-story buildings you'll see in a second, some old buildings they actually rehabbed, and then also the wood townhouses. And I think what's really kind of neat is it really tried to make it tie to the rest of Boston, kind of historic Boston, kind of how Boston neighborhoods have all developed over time. And there's no doesn't look like it was built the same day. It looked like it was really developed over centuries. So it's kind of a neat way to, and also I think as we walk down this boulevard, I think it's important for you guys to really see how this is before Columbia Point kind of looked in on itself, and now Harbor Point really tries to pull not only residents from Harbor Point down to the water, but also just the whole city of Boston, BC High, which is close by, UMass Boston, which is close by. This boulevard really acts as a way to try to pull people to the water and pull people in to the community, so we're part of the community.
So it's important to realize that while we're standing here, it's important to remember that we're on what really is a long-term lease, so the property that we stand on is public property. And when you stand here, we're looking out at the ocean, and all along the ocean is a long public access space. And that's a big part of what Ryan's talking about here, is that space needs to remain public. And so even though at the front here, the front gates of Harbor Point, there's restricted access, practically speaking, everyone who's trying to access the public space is allowed in and onto the property.
One of the things that was kind of neat about when CMJ took over Harbor Point, and really was with the residents wanting this, was one of the things is we made sure we take care of the trash. We take care of maintaining the grass. And just like Neil said, we have the Harbor Walk, which is it's down by the water, which is owned by the state, but we maintain it because we want to make sure that we're still an attractive community, kind of a community of choice, the community of people that want to live at. what's really kind of neat, I think, is that as we had talked about earlier, kind of keeping some of the old and some of the new. So this building over here was one of the original 7-story. So there are 3 remaining original 7-story buildings. And one of the things that's really nice is to kind of tie in more with like traditional New England. They put peaks on the roofs, and they also kind of put in those lentils above the windows. It used to be just yellow brick. So then they put those, and then you'll notice even in the old buildings and in the new buildings, it's slightly different. So there's little things that tie together, but yet they're different buildings. So these buildings still have those lentils above the windows, but they are, so there's something that kind of connects them, but yes, just like a neighborhood, it has something that makes them different also. And then on this side, which we used to have, I don't know how many actually, 13 I think Neil said, but now we have 7 3-story brick buildings. So you'll also see this building where they put those lentils above the windows to kind of dress it up a little bit. We also dyed, this brick used to be yellow, now it's dyed red, kind of more traditional Boston color brick. And then they also put peaks on these roofs also. One of the things that's really kind of neat about this building was the residents, the original Columbia Point residents, really wanted to have partly safety and partly kind of ownership. They really wanted to have their own front door. So these buildings used to have kind of a central hallway, and then off that hallway you go to the apartments. So when we redeveloped it, what they did was they made the first 2 floors are actually duplexes. So some are 2 beds, 3 beds, 4s, 5s, but they all have their own kind of front door. And then when they walk in, there's a kitchen, a living room, a half bath, and then upstairs you have the bedrooms. So what they really like about that is people want to have their own front door, kind of their own space, their own front stoop. And then there's a lot of, and it's really true, when you have people kind of hanging out in their front stoop, they're really kind of helping kind of patrol and police the neighborhood and kind of, have more eyes on the neighborhood, more people out and about, because you always feel safer when there's more people around. So that was kind of really neat in this building.
Ryan was just telling us about the ab machine, or the structure here behind us for working out, and it brought a great thing to mind, and something that we talk a lot about in class, which is amenities. So amenities for any development are important to change and to prepare for the market that you're trying to attract to a particular place. So with regard to amenities, back in 1988 there were certain amenities that were important to Harbor Point, or to the transformation from Columbia Point to Harbor Point. What were the amenities then, and how have the amenities changed over time?
Sure. I think one of the big things is just, obviously our fitness center probably was maybe a room 20 by 20, and now it's in a room probably maybe 100 by 200. So our fitness center has grown immensely. I think the big thing is we've done a lot more outside kind of fitness, amenities, as far as like upgrading the playgrounds, upgrading, kind of putting in some of these, outside machines. I think the big thing is really, one of our amenities is just having outdoor space. I think, one of the things I think Joe Corcoran would talk about, and I think it's important to kind of mention, is that kind of 10% of the people will say, when they find out that we're affordable housing, they'll say, I have no interest in that. And then there's another 10% of the people who will say, oh, that's really cool. And they'll see that as kind of like almost an amenity, as like a desirable kind of part of the apartment. But mostly 80% of the people don't care. They really just care about, does it have a fitness center because they want a fitness center? Does it have a pool? Does it have a walk-in closet? How long's my commute? So they have hot button items that they really care about, but mostly if they don't really necessarily care about, is it affordable or not affordable, or who's my neighbor, they care more about, okay, hey, these are things I really care about. And that's why we have to kind of, with our amenities, kind of just always keep them current and keep them really attractive, because obviously people are choosing to live in an apartment to take advantage of those amenities.
So you talked a little bit about how, the tennis courts here, and they look like they were just redone.
Yep. And actually, one new thing is we have pickleball now.
Oh, so tennis courts. Was that one of the original things that was brought out here?
So tennis courts yes, that was original. Pickleball is not. So we have the pickleball. One of the things you'll find, our tennis court is now used more for like, they have like jazz class, Zumba classes and dance classes and workout facilities. There's definitely more of a desire now, it seems, to be working out together. Maybe that wasn't as something that happened maybe 10 years ago. And we're really fortunate to be able to work out outside, because we couldn't really be doing any of those kind of high aerobic classes indoor right now because of COVID.
And up to last year, I remember that Tenacity was running a program here. Do they still run a program at Harbor Point?
Yep. Tenacity's running a program, and then Boys and Girls Club runs a great program up front also.
Yeah.
Right now we're at the end of that kind of Commonwealth Boulevard, kind of pulling people down to the waterfront. And I think, what a beautiful amenity. I think, this is actually owned by the state, but we maintain it. So we cut the grass, we make sure the sprinkler heads work, we make sure the light bulbs work. We kind of maintain and police this boulevard, even though this goes all the way kind of to downtown, the Harbor Walk, and it goes all the way down to Milton, all along the waterfront. So it's kind of a beautiful place to bike and ride, and it's kind of a really neat way that we're kind of connected with the community. I think one of the things I'd love to have you catch is out in the middle there's Deer Island. You kind of see those egg-shaped items. Because believe it or not, in the 80s, this water was really not pleasant at all. No one really kind of wanted to be near the water. But the MWRA really did an amazing job cleaning up the waterfront. And that's one of the reasons why we got this great amenity. But I also think kind of interesting to developers out there, when Harbor Point or Columbia Point was done, our water bill was $100,000. Now our water bill is over $1 million. And it's really not the water that's changed in price, it's really the cost of the sewage that's really gone up dramatically. Even though we had 3-gallon toilets in the 80s, now we have 1.5 gallon, and we've actually have a lot of 0.8 gallon toilets. Kind of the dual flush toilets. We've changed our aerators on the showers and the faucets to lower our consumption, but our cost is really a lot higher. So even I think sometimes you can do the best performing you can possibly come up with, but then something will change that you don't foresee.
So Ryan just talked about the importance of this public space, and each year I try to remind students about the connection that a particular development has to the surrounding community. And I'm always awestruck by the responsibility and the sheer expense that it would take to manage and control such a large open public space. So the question to Ryan is, why does Corcoran Jennison make this level of investment into this public space, which is clearly not their responsibility?
And it really is because we need to make sure it is an amenity. We need to make sure that it is cleaned up. We need to make sure that the grass is cut, because it would reflect poorly on us. It's one of the reasons why we even actually maintain and pick up the trash at the Dever School across the street, because it's our front door, and we need to, first impressions, you can never make a second first impression. We have to make sure that it's attractive and not only for prospective residents, but also for current residents, so that they choose to renew and they stay here. It really is because we want to make sure it stays nice.
So the harbor walk that runs in front of Harbor Point leads up to the end of Columbia Point. And when the transformation, or when Columbia Point was first built, nothing really was on this part of Columbia Point. It was still a trash dump, right? But in the years running out of the 60s, there was a lot of development. You can see that the Kennedy Library was built in the early 70s, and then UMass Boston began to come online. And then since that time, there's been even more development with some more housing developed with Peninsula Partners, where CJ is actually a partner in that development. And now today, UMass has built even more dormitories for students here. So over time, there's been more and more development, and as you can see, stretching out on Columbia Point here, it's quite a developed and lovely place now. So you've got this large community that was once upon a time 1,500 units of failed public housing into a neighborhood that has become the anchor for a whole new section of Boston. So the transformation of Columbia Point to Harbor Point never would have happened unless the developers very early on had made a deep commitment to residents. And the residents were the ones that were driving a lot of the changes that needed to be made. And to this day, a very important element of the management and governance of Harbor Point is the Harbor Point Community Task Force. They have a place here at Harbor Point, and they receive a certain portion of the profits that come into from all the rental income that comes into Harbor Point. And to this day, they make a lot of the decisions, important decisions about management. So how did the evolution of the task force from Columbia Point take place, and what's going on now with the task force?
So what I think is really neat is it really was the residents of Columbia Point that demanded a change. So they're the ones that organized, and they're the ones that really went to the Boston Housing Authority and kind of demanded a change. And what was really to this day, they're still 50-50 partnership. So any major decision is a joint decision between us, between Corcoran Jennison, the owners, and the task force, the owners. They are actual owners of Harbor Point. So, for example, they actually hire the management company. So the task force and Corcoran Jennison, yes, they hire CMJ Management, and I work for CMJ Management, but we answer to them. So monthly we have a big governing board meeting. We go in, we bring in security, we bring in management, we bring in HOU, we'll bring in the Boys and Girls Club, and we kind of report back to them what happens. And then any major decisions, such as, are we going to change landscaping contractors? Or, we're going to change security companies? Or, they'll come to a decision together, they make a vote. There is an arbitration, which one of the neat things is, yes, I'm not saying it's kind of like how you make sausage. It might not always be pretty, but I love sausage, so maybe it is pretty. But when at the end of the day, when it comes out together, they make a decision together. And even though they've made major decisions, anything from parking rules and regulations to, expanding the fitness center to bringing pickleball in, anything they're making, they have to make together. And the thing I think is really a testament to them is they've never had to go to arbitration. They've always, at the end of the day, even though they both have an equal vote, they've come up with a decision together. And I'm not saying it's always been pretty, but I do think one of the things I love about having residents on the board is I care about Harbor Point. I've been here since '93. I love this place, but I still go home to my house. And no matter how much I think I know this site, the residents will always tell me something I didn't know that happens at midnight or happens over a period of time that really affects their quality of life. And it really helps us be better managers because they live here and it's their home. And no matter how much I think I care, and I know I care about the place, it's not my home. And it's always a great perspective to hear from the residents about what's working and what's not working and how they think we can fix things.
So you talk about this meeting that brings together all these different service providers at Harbor Point. Do you still refer to this as the quality of life meeting?
So there's two meetings. The governing board meeting is when we report back to the owners. A lot of times we'll take, if there's a problem from the owner, from like Corcoran Jennison and from the task force, if they say, hey, one of the things that's happened this year because of COVID, we're having a lot more public drinking on the waterfront because I think bars are closed, because people don't want to have parties in their apartments, so people are starting to have parties outside on the harbor walk. So what we'll do is, when we hear that from the owners and we hear that from security, we'll bring that to the separate group that Neil just talked about, the quality of life. We have a quality of life where we kind of bring someone from leasing, someone from the management office, someone from the maintenance department, someone from HOU, someone from security. We have kind of two major meetings. One is the governing board, where we kind of report to the owners, and the owners kind of say, hey, this is what we want, this is the direction we want you to go in, these are the problems we want you to solve, this is what we want you to kind of, maybe it's capital or different contracts we're about to sign. The other thing is they'll also maybe identify problems like the quality of life. And the quality of life really, it is about creating the best quality of life for the residents. So one of the things that's happened this year, I think, is kind of interesting or not interesting with COVID, because I think the bars are closed and people don't want to have parties in their apartments. We're having a little more public drinking on the waterfront and more public drinking out and about. So what we do is we get people from leasing, we get people from security, we get someone from maintenance, we get someone from management, someone from HOU, and to really kind of come together. And it's not about whose fault it is, it's really about, hey, what can we do to kind of solve these problems? So we've done things like trying to have more exercise, more activities outside for exercise, trying to get people to gather, because obviously I do think people are just kind of craving kind of public interaction. So we're trying to give them other ways to interact. And one of the things you'll see, and a new amenity has been very, very popular, is we have the disc golf. So I think you can see, if you can't see the net, we'll show it to you. But we have the new amenity this year on the waterfront that's disc golf, and it's been really, really popular and great. Just trying to get people outside in kind of a more publicly acceptable way, as opposed to drinking outside.
So a number of years ago, we wrote an article called "Quality of Life in Mixed Income Communities," and to Ryan's point, the analysis that we did studying what happens at Harbor Point is that all of these different groups have different functional responsibilities, and it's very easy for different organizations to fall into the habit or the routine of just following what they have to do and be concerned with their own responsibilities. But what the quality of life meeting does is it focuses on residents. It focuses on the needs of residents, and sometimes it will get to the point of talking about individual residents and making priority changes in the community that will improve the quality of life for specific residents or residents at large.
Yeah, no, it's really true. Like you can learn a lot about maybe one individual family's maybe having a difficulty with something or other, and then a lot of times once you kind of really drill in and try to solve that problem, you realize you can solve a lot of other problems, and it really, it takes a village, and it really does. If you have a few people that are struggling, it really can kind of hurt the whole village and hurt the whole community. So we can really try to, as we fix little problems here and here, it really does make everyone's quality of life better.
Housing Opportunities Unlimited has been a key partner with Corcoran Jennison and the residents from the very beginning of the transformation, even the idea of transformation here. And to this day, HOU is a key partner in operating this large housing development. While we were out taking the tour, Teresa Williams with HOU just happened to be in the neighborhood, and so we asked her if she would say a few words about what HOU is doing on the property now, and then maybe I ask you a few questions about how things have changed in the recent years.
That's fine.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what does HOU do at Harbor Point?
Right now, what we're doing is assisting our residents to get rooted in our community and to grow as respectful residents. We assist with lease compliance. We also assist with security, the overall well-being of our elderly folks and things of that sort.
So when you say lease compliance, that's actually a word we haven't used in this tour yet, and it's such an important word, right? It's such an important thing that HOU does. Yes. Can you describe what lease compliance means?
So when you talk about lease compliance, we're talking about low income or subsidized families who every year go through a process of recertification. So what's involved in lease compliance is there are certain guidelines that each household needs to follow in order to be in compliance, with management. And so we assist with that process. It could be housekeeping, rent issues, things of that sort, depending on what the situation is.
Okay. So it's important to remember that eviction is if somebody doesn't pay their rent, It's an incredibly expensive and arduous process to evict somebody. So, and it doesn't really make sense from the management's perspective. It doesn't really make sense for a resident, and oftentimes even from a public policy perspective, eviction doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it ends up costing the state and state agencies a lot more money to support a family once they've become homeless, and they've had to be removed from public housing. So how do you help families avoid missing payments, and what are some of the things that you can do to help them remain compliant?
First, what we would do is assess the family to see, what's going on in the household. Do they need assistance, applying for, let's say, SNAP benefits or something. They might be spending extra money on that. They might be spending extra money on, utilities. So we look at the overall situation, and then we try to budget with them, set up a budget, look at all the income that's coming in, and see where they could try to budget on a monthly basis, to be able to come up with paying the rent on the 1st, because the rent is due on the 1st. But there's always grace periods and things of that sort. But we try to see what's going on in the household to see why this resident is in this particular situation. But the goal is for nobody to get evicted, even if it's a case where unreported income, something to that effect. We help them to come up with payment plans. We look to outside sources like the RAF program to get assistance to help them pay off their balances. So,
and I'm going to sing a phrase for a second, because I think we had a recent issue with a resident that kind of just disappeared. We kind of ghosted us. Like, she wouldn't respond to us. She wouldn't respond to Teresa. We really weren't sure what was going on, but her income balance was, her rent balance was growing and growing. And what was kind of neat, eventually, Teresa kind of tracked her down, found out that she had lost her job, probably because of COVID, and kind of got overwhelmed and almost kind of like hoped that it would just disappear. Mm-hmm. So kind of just, a lot of times, I'll try to avoid a problem, just bury your head in the sand. So what was fantastic about what Teresa was able to do is Teresa was able to kind of coach her and kind of help her come out and kind of admit that she had lost her job. And the neat thing she was able to do is do an income recertification, so that, because her rent is based on 30% of the household's income, but because her income had dropped so significantly, of course she wasn't able to pay the rent. But what Teresa was able to do is get her to do an interim recertification. Mm-hmm. So she recertified her income, which dropped her rent significantly, and it was able to drop it kind of retro, going back a few months. So she went from having a pretty significant balance to having no balance. And then Teresa, so we were able to keep her from getting evicted because she didn't have the rent balance. And then also Teresa was able to help her find out about food programs and different things to really help her kind of be part of the community. Because as Neil said, management doesn't want to evict people because it is incredibly expensive financially, because we have to turn the unit, we have lost rent, and also it's really disruptive to the community. So when you have a member of the community that gets kicked out, it really does kind of send shockwaves through the whole community. So that was just kind of one example of how Teresa really, boots on the ground or sneakers on the ground, really kind of going knocking on doors, and because she has such a history of trust here, because Teresa's been here for...
Yes, actually, I was here for the transformation. I actually lived here before it became Harbor Point. So, over the years, building relationships with folks, that I already knew, and then the new folks coming in, so we look at all avenues to see how we can help residents, to keep their houses. It's not an option to get evicted if we can, absolutely help it,
Can I ask you one more question? I know we've already taken so much of your time. So
her ice cream's melting, I just want to say.
Look, somebody stole my groceries.
So HOU was here at the very beginning, and careful of the curb.
Oh, yes.
HOU was here from the beginning, and they were dealing with certain kinds of issues as an organization, supporting residents in the transformation of the development. And those needs have changed over the years, right? So how do you see the evolution of the needs of low-income residents at Harbor Point compared to the very beginning?
Well, in the beginning, I saw that, people were ready for a change, with everything that they left behind to come into Harbor Point. They were ready for a change, majority. Some still came over with the mentality of, I can do what I want. But we all know that there's rules everywhere to be followed. But today, it changed drastically. We're dealing with a lot of mental health issues. There's domestic issues. But one thing that we try to do is make sure that we have resources to assist our residents, whatever the need is, and especially during COVID-19, we had to get creative in how we were gonna reach out to our residents, because we're used to in-person, visits, going to do home visits, and we weren't able to do that. So everything was kind of remote by email, phone calls, things of that sort, and we started with the assistance of Corcoran Jennison. We started to do HOU bulletins, sending out little newsletters to our seniors to let them know, we're still here, you still can call us, that kind of stuff. Residents, when, recertifications don't stop, you still have to keep going, so people were used to us helping them get their documents together, that kind of stuff. So we did a newsletter that had all the important phone numbers where they can call and get their documents mailed out, that kind of stuff. So it was really challenging, but, as a team, and I mean overall Harbor Point, because, we had to get food sources in place to get delivered food to our seniors and things like that. And the whole Harbor Point team kind of played a role in that, helping us, to get those things done.
So from the beginning, Harbor Point has been a place where there has been lots of families, but as is typical in Boston, over the years, young families have typically moved away from Harbor Point and from Columbia Point when their kids have come to school age. To our right here is a place that used to be the home of an early education center that was managed by UMass. UMass has since moved out, and now there's a great potential for a new program here. What's the new program going to be, Ryan?
So we're excited to the Boys and Girls Club of Dorchester. They have a really successful early learning center elsewhere in Dorchester, and they're going to do that program here at Harbor Point. So they do a great after-school program and a summer program for us and for the kids of Boston, but mostly selfishly, we want our Harbor Point kids there. So they have it'll create an opportunity to really have kids go from probably 6 months old to 18 years old. And actually they hire a lot of the kids to be like summer camp counselors or after school counselors. So we're really kind of hoping for kind of a place for our kids to go from 6 months to probably 20 years old, to go right from preschool, kind of early learning preschool, right through kind of their after school program and their summer program, and then maybe, kind of graduate to be camp counselors.
So when Columbia Point was first built in 1952, the original criticisms were that there was nothing here, that if you were going to build housing here, you would need to build a neighborhood. And one of the first things that was built was the Dever School across the street. But even though it was successful throughout the 50s and the early parts of the 60s, the Dever McCormick School eventually became a challenging educational environment and didn't do particularly well, up until the last several years. Recently, though, there's been some ideas of transformation and some new ideas of what can be done with the Dever McCormick. Ryan, what's going on with the Dever McCormick School now?
So what I think is exciting is the Boston Public Schools has really put a lot of attention on it. and they're really talking about changing it from just a middle school to a 7 through 12 7 through 12 school. And what's neat is we have just beyond there, a little bit further down, they have the Dever, which is a kindergarten through 6th grade. So we really would have a kind of a school, hopefully of choice, that kids would choose to go to. That would be from really kindergarten through 12th grade. So just really kind of a very nice 1-bedroom apartment, has a really nice walk-in closet. Rents kind of go from probably like $21.50 to $24.50. In the new environment now, we hadn't done a month free, probably since 2008. But the market's definitely gotten a lot softer. You can hear we are pet friendly. You can hear a dog barking. One of the things by UMass Boston not going virtual, it definitely has hurt our demand for this September. But we're still doing well, but still in that price range of 21 to 24. So this is very typical of our 2 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms are around 850 square feet, go anywhere from kind of $2,600, $2,700 to $3,200 per month. One of the things that's great about Harbor Point is that we have 400 low-income units that are mixed throughout the whole property. We have 888 market units that are kind of mixed throughout the whole community. We have everything from 1 beds all the way up to 6 bedrooms. Because one of the things that CJ committed to properly housing any of the original residents. So all of the 357 original residents, if they needed a 3-bed or a 4-bed or a 5-bed or a 6-bed, they were built on the property. One of the things that's kind of interesting is in your book, it probably says we have 1,283 apartments, but we've actually taken five 5-bedrooms and made them into 10 2-bedrooms. So now we have 1,288 apartments. Just because the demand for those larger units really has come down. So we still have, I think it's 187 3-beds. I think it's like 24 beds and like 5 5-bedrooms, and I think there's like 4 6-bedrooms. But the majority of our apartments, almost 560, almost half the community is 2 bedrooms.
So operating a huge community like Harbor Point is challenging in normal circumstances, in kind of even a big economy, a growing economy. Like here in Massachusetts, this place has been remarkably successful. But COVID-19 has provided a whole host of new challenges for communities like this, for working conditions for companies. So the question I have for Ryan is, how has COVID-19 impacted the operation of Harbor Point, the market that Harbor Point serves, and the functioning of the community?
Certainly, yeah. No, this has been a kind of a crazy, I don't know, whatever, since March. Was it 5 months? Initially, it really kind of came down. We just want to make sure we kept the lights on. We were really, really concerned about keeping things cleaner than normal. For COVID, as we were trying to figure out how it was transmitted. And we have an elderly building on the community that we were particularly very concerned about as we heard about all the outbreaks in the nursing homes. We were very, very concerned about how are we going to protect the seniors. And one of the things that's so strange is for years, we've always been trying to figure out ways to get our seniors out of their apartments. We do bingos, we do potluck dinners, we're doing, barbecues, we have chairs, we have a lounge. And then with COVID, we immediately shut down our lounges. We take the chairs out of the lobby, where we go from really trying to figure out ways to get the seniors to interact to really trying to get the seniors kind of to stay in their apartments. So it was hard because we're doing it for their safety. We just really were concerned about trying to figure out how this whole thing's being spread. And then we're also really concerned about our employees, our cleaners, our maintenance, our grounds guys. They're our essential employees. You know, they don't get a chance to stay home. They can't work from home. They had to be on site, you know, 24 hours a day, you know, doing work orders, doing emergency work orders, the cleaners. So really our big concern was trying to get them PPE. And obviously, you know, there was a big push for PPE for hospitals, and I understand that. But, you know, we were also very concerned about our employees. And I think Teresa touched on it earlier about kind of, it is strange because we really were kind of the whole philosophy of getting in front of people. And our whole philosophy was, let's get an appointment, let's get around a table, let's solve problems. And we all switched from that to doing phone calls, doing Zooms, you know, to really trying to do that. I think it's been amazing how well it's worked out. But that being said, you know, we are seeing, I touched a little bit about the drinking, public drinking. We are seeing more domestic violence. You know, I think the stress level is getting there. I am concerned about this winter when people are really being more locked up in their house because of the weather. Luckily now people can get outside, can walk in the harbor walk, and kind of do some exercising. But the stress level is kind of getting high. I think especially, you know, there's financial concerns, there's all kinds of concerns as far as educating your kids. I mean, the Boston Public Schools right now is going to do like this hopscotch thing. We're kind of like every other day. But it's hard having kids home, and it's hard even having the college kids doing their classes online or in their apartments. So it's luckily we've done well, but it's definitely something we're really kind of trying to stay on.
So every year we make this tour out to Harbor Point, and it's an important part of this class. It's an important part of students' recognition that so much can change in a community, and that the power of real estate to serve as a platform for change in housing, to be a platform for social change. This is really the proof in the pudding. The proof in the pudding. And so I want to thank Corcoran Jennison for allowing us to come out here today to do the filming. I want to thank Ryan for being such a good host and for sharing so much of his experience with us today. Do you have a couple words about the transformation and what we've seen today?
It's just I think especially in this year with Joe Corcoran passing away. I think it's really amazing to really kind of look at what Harbor Point's done. It's not easy. I think I made a reference earlier. It's kind of like sausage. It might not always be pretty, but it's definitely hard work. But it's very rewarding to see kind of what a great community happens here, and how we just kind of have to keep working at it every single day. And I think we can kind of show off something that's really a place that people want to live, and that's what's so exciting about Harbor Point. It's really a place that really people choose and really want to live, and that goes to why we get such good market rents, and it's why we have, you know, I think over 3,000 people on our wait list for the affordable side. So it really is a testament to this just being a great place to live.